What had once been an alleged ideal is now a ragged skeleton rattling like a scarecrow in the wind over the whole world, but men lack the courage to glance up and to discover the grinning skull under the bloody rags. That skeleton is socialism. 50 years ago, there might have been some excuse, though not justification, for the widespread belief that socialism is a political theory motivated by benevolence and aimed at the achievement of men's well-being. Today, that belief can no longer be regarded as an innocent error. Socialism has been tried on every continent of the globe. In the light of its results, it is time to question the motives of socialism's advocates. The essential characteristic of socialism is the denial of individual property rights. Under socialism, the right to property, which is the right of use and disposal, is vested in society as a whole, i.e. in the collective, with production and distribution controlled by the state, i.e. by the government. Socialism may be established by force, as in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or by vote, as in Nazi, National Socialist Germany. The degree of socialization may be total, as in Russia, or partial, as in England. Theoretically, the differences are superficial. Practically, they are only a matter of time. The basic principle in all cases is the same. The alleged goals of socialism were the abolition of poverty, the achievement of general prosperity, progress, peace, and human brotherhood. The results have been a terrifying failure. Terrifying, that is, if one's motive is men's welfare. Instead of prosperity, socialism has brought economic paralysis and/or collapse to every country that tried it. The degree of socialization has been the degree of disaster. The consequences have varied accordingly. England, once the freest and proudest nation of Europe, has been reduced to the status of a second-rate power and is perishing slowly from hemophilia, losing the best of her economic blood, the middle class and the professions. The able, competent, productive, independent men are leaving by the thousands, migrating to Canada or the United States in search of freedom. They are escaping from the reign of mediocrity, from the mawkish poorhouse where, having sold their rights in exchange for free dentures, the inmates are now whining that they'd rather be red than dead. In more fully socialized countries, famine was the start, the insignia announcing socialist rule, as in Soviet Russia, as in Red China, as in Cuba. In those countries, socialism reduced the people to the unspeakable poverty of the pre-industrial ages, to literal starvation, and has kept them on a stagnant level of misery. No, it is not just temporary, as socialism's apologists have been saying for half a century. After 45 years of government planning, Russia is still unable to solve the problem of feeding her population. As far as superior productivity and speed of economic progress are concerned, the question of any comparisons between capitalism and socialism has been answered once and for all, for any honest person, by the present difference between West and East Berlin. Instead of peace, socialism has introduced a new kind of gruesome lunacy into international relations. The Cold War, which is a state of chronic war with undeclared periods of peace between wantonly sudden invasions, with Russia seizing 1/3 of the globe, with socialist tribes and nations at one another's throats, with socialist India invading Goa and communist China invading socialist India. An eloquent sign of the moral corruption of our age is the callous complacency with which most of the socialists and their sympathizers, the liberals, regard the atrocities perpetrated in socialistic countries and accept rule by terror as a way of life, while posturing as advocates of human brotherhood. In the 1930s they did protest against the atrocities of Nazi Germany, but apparently it was not an issue of principle, but only the protest of a rival gang fighting for the same territory, because we do not hear their voices any longer. In the name of humanity, they condone and accept the following: the abolition of all freedom and all rights, the expropriation of all property, executions without trial, torture chambers, slave labor camps, the mass slaughter of countless millions in Soviet Russia, and the bloody horror of East Berlin, including the bullet-riddled bodies of fleeing children. When one observes the nightmare of the desperate efforts made by hundreds of thousands of people struggling to escape from the socialized countries of Europe, to escape over barbed wire fences, under machine gun fire, one can no longer believe that socialism, in any of its forms, is motivated by benevolence and by the desire to achieve men's welfare. No man of authentic benevolence could evade or ignore so great a horror on so vast a scale. Socialism is not a movement of the people. It is a movement of the intellectuals, originated, led, and controlled by the intellectuals, carried by them out of their stuffy ivory towers into those bloody fields of practice where they unite with their allies and executors, the thugs. What, then, is the motive of such intellectuals? Power-lust. Power-lust as a manifestation of helplessness, of self-loathing, and of the desire for the unearned. The desire for the unearned has two aspects, the unearned in matter and the unearned in spirit. By spirit, I mean man's consciousness. These two aspects are necessarily interrelated, but a man's desire may be focused predominantly on one or the other. The desire for the unearned in spirit is the more destructive of the two, and the more corrupt. It is a desire for unearned greatness. It is expressed, but not defined, by the foggy murk of the term prestige. The seekers of unearned material benefits are merely financial parasites, moochers, looters, or criminals who are too limited in number and in mind to be a threat to civilization until and unless they are released and legalized by the seekers of unearned greatness. Unearned greatness is so unreal, so neurotic a concept, that the wretch who seeks it cannot identify it even to himself. To identify it is to make it impossible. He needs the irrational, undefinable slogans of altruism and collectivism to give a semi-plausible form to his nameless urge and anchor it to reality, to support his own self-deception more than to deceive his victims. The public interest, service to the public, are the means, the tools, the swinging pendulums of the power-luster's self-hypnosis. Since there is no such entity as the public, since the public is merely a number of individuals, any claimed or implied conflict of the public interest with private interests means that the interests of some men are to be sacrificed to the interests and wishes of others. Since the concept is so conveniently undefinable, its use rests only on any given gang's ability to proclaim that the public c'est moi, and to maintain the claim at the point of a gun. No such claim has ever been or can ever be maintained without the help of a gun, that is, without physical force. But, on the other hand, without that claim, gunmen would remain where they belong, in the underworld, and would not rise to the councils of state to rule the destinies of nations.